Hello and welcome to the 6 Plus show, a podcast for your wargaming and 40k needs. Hobby talk, tactics, tournament reports, lore and much more. We have it all. Please welcome your host for the evening, Tom.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and nimble auto-advancing raveners to that 6 Plus show. Regular co-host Lee has abandoned us to raise an actual human child. I am informed that these require constant care and attention, and that leaving them half assembled in a garage for years is in fact frowned upon. So we wish Lee all the best with that, and he will of course return in the future to chat about things he's interested in coming on and talking about. But in the meantime, we're just going to save his energy for when we need him to kill people for us at events. But that does mean there's an opportunity for a new co-host on the 6 Plus show, and I am delighted today to welcome Davey to the team. Hello, Davey. How are you doing?
Hey guys, how are you doing?
It is very good to see you. You've got a very nice little background space behind you there. I don't see anything 40k related. That's the one thing I would say.
No, this is what we call wife's corner. So this is all the wife's things, nice things.
Nice things, yeah, lovely, yeah. Very healthy things. And do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself in 40k terms, Davey? They don't need to know your sort of whole life story, but tell us about your sort of 40k story to date.
Well, if you know anything about me, you know the fact that I love talking about myself, so that's no problem at all. I'm Davey Liddell. I've wrote it in my notes, in fact, that I am Davey Liddell. You might recognise me as the 14th best Tyranid player in the Great British Isles, which is something I just researched. After one event, so
nice.
I've been a Warhammer addict for nearly 2 years now. I played a lot as a teenager. I used to play fantasy battles as a teenager, but I had to stop because my mum and dad thought I was getting groomed by child predators.
Oh shit!
Yes, so I had to stop.
No.
Yeah, but I'm back in the hobby now via. I had to come out to them again.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
They weren't as bothered about it then.
He can probably make his own decisions at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I came back in via Magic the Gathering, so I have like a unique appreciation for the balance in this game, because if you haven't played Magic the Gathering before, man, that game is insane for balance. So
is it really? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I've never really thought comparatively at games beyond just Sigmar 40k. So is Magic really weird?
It is, right? And I think I was trying to think about this before and how to explain it. But you know, if like you need a unit to make your army better, you can go out and buy that unit. You can't really do that for a reasonable price in Magic, because you have to go and buy a booster pack. So it's like going and saying, right, I need aberrants.
Because the cards are just all mixed up all around the place.
And then just ending up with more Atalan Bites. Okay.
It's funny you say more Atalan Bites, because I actually have 2 boxes more Atalan Bites than I could legally ever field. Because of a shipping mix-up.
Oh, yeah.
And I have declared myself, I have messaged Goblin Gaming like, look, they have arrived. What do we want to do? And I was like, come on, just keep them. And of course they're like, nah, you post them back. So that's a shame.
Yes.
But it's nice. For the time being, I have 40 Atalan Jackals in a world that can only ever accommodate 30. Anyway, sorry, I've derailed you.
But yeah, interesting fact, I was in Harry Potter.
What?
Yes.
Which bit?
The second last Harry Potter.
Yeah.
What was it? Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Yeah.
I was a Snatcher.
Whoa!
I'm in it for a good 13 seconds. Close up on my face, everything.
Oh my word!
Yeah, I recognise you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the irony isn't lost on me that like my dad stopped me playing Warhammer because I looked like someone who was a child predator, and then I was cast as a child predator. Like that's some Greek tragedy shit right there.
Yeah, that's you became the very thing they tried to protect you from. That's great. I'm gonna have to watch that now. And we're going to have to get that up on. Yeah, that's got to be on our socials. You know, we've got to start. When we do bat reps, we have like people do a little intro thing, and
people walk on and turn.
They do a pose, but we'll have Davey with like his hood up. And in terms of 40k armies, obviously you have been deep in the hive mind for a while, haven't you? That's your main.
Absolutely, yeah. So I main Nids. I did have salamanders. That was the first army I came back into it with, but I sold them and picked up Tyranid just for something different because I was so sick of just marching forward slowly. And I bought Tyranid 2 weeks later. They announced the book. I was like, this was a great idea.
Yeah, solid shout. Very, very nice. Been a good time to be running Nids. And you the whole time I've known you, you've always run. You basically covered all the different ground as far as I can see. You've done monsters. You've done quite finessey psychic lists. You were quite big on your Tervigan, weren't you? You like your Tervigan?
Yeah, I do like the Tervigan. It is really great. I mean, that's the thing with the Nid book, man. We're so lucky in that we've got so many decent options.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Leviathan was big, but I am one of those annoying people that doesn't like to do the mainstream thing. Like, I want to do something else.
I feel you, buddy. I feel you.
People all I want is for people not to roll their eyes when they see my list. That's all I want, right?
Yeah, I know. I totally get that, and I think when you've got an army that's sort of having its time in the sun, as Nids is, it's especially hard to do that. You have to work really hard to convince people that you're one of the good guys. It's not easy. I had this with Jakari where you'd be like, "Look at this weird sub faction." They're like, "I still hate you, really." And it's tough out there, but the wheel turns, and it'll all come back round again.
I don't see the irony as well that I'm currently running like John Lennon's list as well. So,
yeah. Well, you can't do it all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I like to try things, but also I like to win games.
Yeah, I think that Kraken list is also genuinely very interesting. Like it does a lot of quite unique stuff, and it's not walking, 27 warriors into the middle and going hello. There's a lot more stuff going on with that. So, no, it's cool. Our captain's here, and he's not been able to say anything yet. So we'll get our captain in. He is also here. I'm also joined as ever by our stalwart, Chris. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good. I'm excited to have a Harry Potter.
Yeah, I can't believe that. It's so exciting.
That's very exciting. He's kept that one hidden.
Yeah, he has. That is a slow reveal. It gets
me
me curious as to whether there's other acting credentials in his background, and it looks like there is. So we'll slowly reveal these as we move through the weeks. I don't think there's any sense giving those all away up front, but it's a whole.
Got to keep them coming back for more, Tom. We've got to keep them coming back.
Reel them in.
But it's good to have someone in front of the camera that actually has a clue what to do with that. That's actually quite reassuring, so that's good. Chris, what's new in your life? Have you done any 40k nerdy related things of late?
I actually have not really. I've been it's weird, but since the last tournament, I've just not been bothered to paint. I've painted one Hemlock, and other than that, nothing. I've just kind of been watching bat reps and that sort of thing. Been playing the new Pokemon.
Yeah,
because I am obviously that cool. But other than that, no. Actually, hobbying has been very poor recently. But I am just about to buy a shed load of Craftworld Eldar from Jamie Clifford, who at one point we said, let's do Crusades, and Jamie went, okay, and then bought a 2,000 point army. And then in true Jamie style went, oh, actually this isn't for me. And so I'm now picking up pieces. I've probably just increased the price of what I'm paying him by 10% by saying this. But
very nice.
I'm going to be getting lots of good stuff. So yeah, working towards Yannari still.
Very nice.
But at some point in the new year when Harlequins maybe finally get butchered in January, who knows? Then I could just smoothly switch over to
shame.
Yeah. Everyone would be devastated, wouldn't they, if Harlequin secondaries weren't so good.
They've had a really good run, considering it is nearly a year
since Void Readers.
For them still to be pushing the high 50s, I think is amazing. Like to get away with it for that long. I think Drakari probably got away with it for almost that long too, actually. So it's just elf books. They just except Craftworlds, of course, but you'll find that all out for yourself. I don't want to give that away. Craftworlds, obviously. Maybe they'll get some nice stuff in the new year. That'd be very timely.
Oh yeah.
I think that's good advice in general, though. If you don't feel like painting, just don't paint for like a week, 2 weeks. I think that's massively important because it's a hobby, and if you accidentally make it an extra job, that can be really rough. And I think that's always the danger with this stuff, right? And so
painting's easy with a deadline as well. I think sometimes.
Yeah. Speaking of.
Speaking
of, I actually have had like a few months of being quite good and only painting like one squad at a time. But then Innes Wilson obviously came on the show and taught me into thinking that I'd be good at GSC. I'm not. Thanks a lot, Innes, by the way. That's great. It's really hard. It's really fucking hard. You made it sound so easy. It's really hard if you're not Innes Wilson. Just going to get that out there now. As it turns out, been sold alive. Sold a dream. Just like the cult, in fact, actually. But I've been painting a lot of GSC. I've painted 20 more neophytes, and I've started on these Atalan Jackals because that's the secret sauce in GSC. As it turns out, it's all about them bikes. and so I've been painting through them. They're actually a joy to paint. They're lovely models. But because I had a bit of painting downtime, actually doing a nice batch paint over a week was really fun. I really enjoyed it because I hadn't done it in ages. It was really nice to layer things up and have people chatting about the guard book in the background as I painted my GC the cult. So that was good. But we'll chat events because that was for an event. What we're gonna do today is we're starting a series on how to lose at 40k. I don't know how long the series is going to be. Obviously, one of the best ways to lose at anything is to just give up halfway through. So we might maybe it's a 3-4 series. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just another thing that you couldn't be bothered to do. And I think there's an important lesson in that in itself. But this week we'll be doing practical tips. But before that, we're going to briefly. Chris is shaking his head because he wants to tell us everything about everything. I'm going to try and briefly run through our recent event attendance. I will let Chris go first because then I'll know how much time we have left to work with at the end.
Yeah, okay, well.
But Chris, tell us about the event you've been to and how you did and any key lessons from that. Off you go.
Cool. So a few weeks ago now, we went to Coventry. We took quite a few people. All of us went for the 3-day event.
Yep.
So we had Jamie East, he went 4 and 4. We had Paul, who went 3 and 5. Kieran, who won 3 games. Drew won.
Yep.
We had Dave, who played some Warhammer and won 2. So he's not having the best time. But then Lee and I did the 2-day.
Yep.
Yeah. Lee and I did the 2-day. And Lee went with his Chaos Demons, and he did really well. He went 3-2, but his 2 losses were to David Gaylard and Mark Crumbleholm. So he just got really unlucky with his matchups, and considering he hadn't really practiced much, that was really good. And he actually only lost by 2 or 3 points to Mark Crumbleholm. It came down to 1 Warp Ritual, which he didn't get off. So he did really, really well.
Yeah.
I took the Harlequins. It was just after the light nerf, so I was trying Twilight stuff. I tried 3 big blobs, didn't like it, so I went back to a mix of my list. So for any Harlequin players out there, I had 6 Star Weavers with 5 in each boat. I had 2 10-man blocks for Choppy, and I had 2 bikes because I like to do that stuff.
Very nice.
So game 1, there were good news and bad news. The good news was I was running against Drakari, and as Tom has pointed out multiple times, Drakari do not like Harlequins.
No, they do not.
So it was a good matchup for me. The bad news was it was Julio, who at the time was ranked the number 1 Drakari player in the whole world.
He's very good at Drakari. Yeah.
Turns out he is quite good at Drakari. So we went in, it was Abandoned Sanctuaries, and overall in this game, I actually felt really happy with how I played. I put out just the right amount of models to do what I needed to do. I was playing it really nicely, and at about turn 3, I was 60-40 up and in a really good place. The problem was, at that point, at the start of my turn 4, I also had no time left on my clock. Because so obviously some players play with clocks, some don't. Some people really stick to the rules of the clock, some just use it as a guideline. Julio plays it so the proper full chess clock rules. So as soon as you're out of time, you can only roll saves, which kind of sucks. So I ended up losing 80-60 because I timed out. We discussed it afterwards at 83-68. So I lost by 15. We discussed it afterwards. We've kind of both agreed I would have won. The game, I felt in a really good place in terms of that game. I still had plenty of scoring.
It's a great matchup. Yeah. So that's good. You can have your head held high by the same.
I was happy with that one, but also sad. Game 2, I then went into Death Guard. Now, Death Guard have lots of obsec, which means it's hard to steal objectives. And Death Guard also really like Shuriken because it goes down to 1 damage. I was playing against a lovely guy called John who was just there for a good time. One of his first ever tournaments had been the LVO.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, he just flew over.
Maniac.
He came, got a Death Guard army, flew over to LVO. What a hero. He had 20, 30 to Death Guard Terminators and little bits of extra. He hadn't really played against Harlequins before. and he didn't realise you need to bum rush them. So he didn't probably lock down his objectives well enough. But with all that obsec, it should be really hard for me to be stealing objectives and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we have the benefit of Stuart locally to know that it can basically be impossible to get stuff.
It can be. And in this game, I was able to keep him because it was data scry salvage. I was able to keep him to 0 on primary all the way through to turn 5. On turn 4, it was like 90-24, the score. I finished 97-67 because you had a huge amount of scoring left.
Very nice.
At the end. But I was happy with that. That was a good one. Lovely opponent. Game 3 was against Emperor's Children. A guy who loves his Emperor's Children, so he didn't have the full list. He didn't have Abaddon. He didn't have the guy which gives them trans hit and no rerolls. He had obliterators. Dark Apostle. And this was a very interesting game on turn 2 because I made a massive mistake. His Terminators were sat in the middle ready to strike. I move blocked them with 5 troop. And I went, haha, you can't get to my 10-man now. What I did forget is that they have lots of storm bolters. Bolters. And what happened was those 5 troop then very quickly died. And he had like an 8-inch charge to my 10 troop. And then he just sat there in the middle and chopped up a Star Weaver I'd used to move block instead. And I guess in his mind he went, I'm just going to hold this middle. And that's my plan. And at no point did he think, I could go in and wreck this 10-man. On top of that, he'd failed Delightful Agonies. So that was my go turn. So I invested 5 CP and lots of shooting and psychic, and that 10-man just went to pieces. Without the Feel No Pain, it was quite comfortable in the end.
That is the go turn. If they don't make the 5 up, that is when you go.
Especially when you're re-rolling all hits.
If you're listening, Lee, please don't make the 5 up on Thursday. Early would be good. Like maybe turn 1 or 2 is when I would like you to fail that, so that I can punch you in the face while I still have models. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yep. And then that game, he took one flank, I took the other. It was Death and Zeal, and we traded over the middle, and I won 180.
Nice.
So, he just couldn't. He had this idea. This is a Dreadnought. This Dreadnought's going to kill that Star Weaver. It's probably not, mate. It's got like 2 shots. We've all been there. It's not going to do it.
The old assign one model to do one job.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Game 4 was the most epic game I've had in a very, very long time. It was against Orcs, a guy called Reese, lovely opponent, played it really, really well, like a really high-skilled opponent. And it was brutal. So I won 66-63. Now, that's a really low-scoring game for Harlequins. And that was quite simply because I chose Weave Veil. And I went to do my first Weave. I was like, I'll play outside of his denies. And then he went, I've got a stratagem where I can deny from any unit. I didn't know he had that strategy. And I guess I'll now know for future to ask. But basically what happened was turn 1, I rolled a 4, got denied. Turn 2, I rolled a 4, CP re-rolled it into a 3, got denied. Turn 3, I rolled a double 1, perils, had to take it because I needed the CP elsewhere. Turn 4, I rolled a 4, and that got denied. And turn 5, all my Shadow Seers were dead. So I scored 0 on Weave Veil.
Wow.
The only silver lining there was he chose Warp Ritual and only scored a 3 on it. So that kind of balanced itself out. It was so hard. My dice rolling was appalling in this game. And what that led to was I got demeched super quickly. And anyone who plays Harlequins knows it gets a lot harder when you're getting demeched. And it was constantly, I was on the edge of, can I kill enough and then survive the punch back? And I ended the game with a Troop Master and 10 guys, and they were able to spread out to these 2 objectives to get me a hold more.
Nice.
In order to score me the 3-point win. One other thing that was quite irritating was the WAS bomb Dakar Jets, which are horrendous. And every single time, every turn, he got through 1 wound, and every single time he rolled a 5 or 6 on 1-shot Star Weaver, which was quite irritating. Then the one time it failed, he got through a melter shot and rolled the 6 for the D6 damage. I was like, you son of a bitch. So that was a very satisfying game. And then 3-1. Yeah, exactly, Davey, exactly. You can comment. Was against a girl called Christina, and that was Sisters of Battle. And this was a game which I actually really enjoyed because I only killed 3 models in the entire game. Yep. And from turn 2, I knew I'd won. She had a different Sisters list. She had lots of Paragon suits, Penitent engines, Mortifiers, etc. They can't travel through walls. So I got first turn, and I went and stuck 2 Skyweavers in the deployment zone and blocked them all off from escaping. Unfortunately, Christina didn't realise that she needed to charge to then kill them, pile in and consolidate out of the trap. So turn 2, I stuck an empty Starweaver in the same place. And that's how and by the time we got to turn 5, she was just about starting to get out of her deployment zone. I lost about a third of my army. She also chose Assassinate. She was never getting anywhere near any of my characters. So it finished 97-80. So yeah, I went 4-on-1. I came
very good result.
100
really good result.
People. I was really happy with how I played that weekend, barring that one mistake against Emperor's Children, which didn't cost me the game. I actually felt I played the list really well. I really like the list. I've made 2 changes for my list for Leicester. I've changed my Death Jester, so I've now got the no Overwatch Death Jester, because I don't know if you know this, guys, but there are flamers around and they're quite good. So if I want to charge these flamers, I need to be able to charge them. So I've got that, and I've gone from the Twilight Fangs sword. I've gone back to Chegarak's Rose, because most of the time I just wished I had a 3 damage weapon which was re-rolling wounds, as opposed to lots of attacks but only 2 damage. I just wished I had that really for a lot of those particular games, so I've just gone back to that switch. But
nice.
Very happy.
And you're going to stick on Twilight, because the Herd have obviously followed Mike Porter back to Light. So you'll get some points for respect if you stick on Twilight now.
Well, I'm such a huge player like that. Alternative. No, with the list with the 2 blobs, which I actually found really useful, and in games which I've lost in the past, just having that combat threat would have been nice. You need the CP.
Yeah.
And therefore you need to have Player of the Twilight, which is
you
where
need the regen,
right? I think if you're running 8 boats, then I think, as Mike
Of course you run light. Of course you
run. I only have 6 boats, and I'm sticking with 6 boats. What I've done is I've got rid of some bikes, and I've put in some fighty blobs, and actually I really like that dynamic.
The 10-mans are just so cool. I remember from when you were first play testing Harlequins, seeing what a 10-man does, and you're just like, it's so fun.
They can basically take out nearly anything.
Yeet it in, slap some strats on, and it will blend most things in the world. It's so good, so nice to have. No, that's really cool, man. And it's you'd had a couple of frustrating events in the run up to that, so I think it's nice to see perseverance and practice and effort reaping a reward. Because I mean, I say, especially considering the sort of time-based conditions in the loss to Julio, you've basically, come incredibly close to a really, really, really top finish. And 12th is amazing anyway in a sort of crowd of 100 plus. So really, really good showing. And that will be what you take to Leicester, you think?
Yeah. That's the plan. I said I'm working on Unari at the moment, but they'll kick in if there's a big nerf in January. But other than that, sticking with Harlequin. So this is the list I like.
Brilliant. And Davey, were you also at Leicester? Am I right?
Not Leicester. Coventry.
Where would you been? Coventry. Yes. Do you want to tell people about your Coventry experience?
Yes, I was.
You were at the 3-dayer.
I was at the 3-day. Yeah,
wow.
So that was the first ever 3-day. You know what? I really enjoyed it. I thought I'd be more knackered than I was, but
you liked the 3-day. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Nice. That's good. I found my first. I think because we did Beachhead and because I drank too much, I found it quite harrowing. But I think it's there. That's it's an interesting one. So take us through it.
Sure. So overall, I went 4-4.
Mm-hmm.
I started the day off against Jay Seaburn, who's in Vanguard.
Oh, I know Jay. Yes, I've played Jay. Yep.
What a nice guy, right? And I will preface this entire quick review that I'm going to do with everyone was a belter. Like, everyone was top that I played. It was such a good weekend. And maybe that's why, playing 8 games to really nice opponents, maybe that's why I came out of it I just edged Jay on the primary, so that took me for a game 1 win, which I was quite happy about. I then played Stephanie. Stephanie was playing Harlequins. Again, absolutely top last, really good crack, and giving me abuse the entire time, which I loved, and beat me 171.
Nice.
So, just scoring for fun, man. Really good.
Was that the 16 5-mans? No, it had a load of 12 5-mans.
I think so, yeah. It was relentlessly dropping boats into
5-man she was playing,
Yeah, it was really, really good. And then, forgive me, I've not wrote his name in my ICT app, but Shark Boy, if you know, you'll know Shark Boy, if you know Shark Boy. Again, a close game. He neck-runned me, and then, but he came a little bit too close to the Kraken onslaught. Oh yeah, just really tell you what I took on my list. It was John Lennon's list, essentially. 2 changes. I took out the Parasite and put in Death Leaper and removed the Paravore. I really like Death Leaper. He's great. And then the adaptive ability I changed to no Overwatch or set to defend. As Chris said, there's flamers around, right? I was expecting loads of demons. Didn't play them once. Good.
That's the nature of a meta threat like that. They're not quite common enough to really know that you're going to hit them. It's frustrating.
Absolutely. But I managed to just batter him to death, and then so I was fine after that. Then I played. One of the best players I've ever played is Ed Watts. He was great. He beat me 95-33, which absolutely savaged me. Yeah,
wow.
Absolutely. He did a really great play where he forward deployed his scouts and his striking scorpions with Karandras 9 inches away from my deployment zone.
Yeah.
And here's me thinking, I'm the NID player. I'm going to be aggressive on him. And I'm like, where's my OBSEC? Have I put this all in the right place? And he just denied me primary with OBSEC striking scorpions. And it was really, really great. Well done. Like, it was just, I was like, yeah mate, well played.
Interesting.
Then I played Raphael Harbinson with his Blood Angels. He was on stream.
Very good. Very, very talented player, Raphael.
Yeah, very good. He Fall on Fury me, and I charged his Fall on Fury unit with my Hive Tyrant, thinking, right, he'll just sweep them up. But then I forgot he had 2 CP. So we were talking about making mistakes. That's a mistake, because I made another charge at the same time, and then he bonked my Hive Tyrant on the head, killing it with 3 Death Company.
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, that is a great one for our How to Lose section in a minute.
Bit of a
Hive Tyrant.
Oh, buddy.
Then I played Graham with his Harlequins. I think he was the #1 Harlequin player at LGT, if I remember rightly. That's what he mentioned. But he, again, another great Harlequin player, knew what he was doing.
He's not the current #2 Harlequin player, I know that much. That's Chris. On the UK TC site, I've not looked at the ITC one. We only look at the ones we're high up in. That's as a general rule.
But yeah, top guy bought me a pint. I was really happy with that. He wins 10 out of 10. Maxwell Cock after that, who was in my
I know Maxwell team. Yeah.
Played him with the Yanari. It was closer than he gave it credit for, is what I would say. 76-57. It was just a couple of primary bits, and then after that, it was away. And then a really great guy, Douglas Ember. It was his first tournament, but like to go nearly 4-4 at your first tournament, also to go on a 3-day tournament for your first tournament. Kudos to that guy, right?
Keen bean. I remember when I was that into it, I probably absolutely would have, 2-footed into it like that. To be fair,
he came over from Hungary to play.
Oh wow!
Yeah, really nice, but really nice guy. I made it my priority. I was like, right, I need to give this guy the best game he can have as his last game at the first tournament. So,
that's amazing.
Overall, 4-4. I've made a couple of changes because I'm at Leicester in 2 weeks' time. Just basically going back, I've swapped Death Leaper out for the Parasite.
Very, very nice.
Because the Parasite.
I love the Parasite. Parasite's such a techie little bastard. Yeah, that's great.
It just has a really great OBSEC play as well. And it has the biggest thing really is the synapse.
Yes. No, very nice. Yeah, I mean it's a list you've now had some pretty substantial reps with, so I think you're in a very nice spot going into Leicester, which is good.
I'm hopeful. I've got Savage Armor this weekend, but I'm taking Harlequin spam. So
because there's less terrain, more
I believe
sparse
so. Tried to game it a little bit.
No, I think that's sensible. I like that. There's always the Khan effect. Is if you're going into unknown territory, take your big shell bugs.
Yeah.
Great, very nice. And I'll very, very quickly rattle through Hellstorm, because I was at Hellstorm this past weekend. It was my first GT with Gene Stealer Cult. I took a list that was sort of somewhere between the kind of Eric Lathris style bite lists and stuff, more to my taste, with a Magus and lots of pure strains. I had 3 big packs of pure strains. And it was a good list. I had a really good time with it. Hellstorm has lots of different terrain types. And I had some nice wins into Tau, Knights, and Blood Angels.
Tau's on stream.
Towers on stream. I appeared on stream, and you can go and watch that stream. There's a YouTube link somewhere. It's 3 turns of them thinking I'm going to die, and then 2 turns of them realizing that is not who is dying at all. It is in fact the Tau. The Tau die extremely hard. My opponent Bradley was a really lovely man. We had a really lovely game. But he just gave me some space to get some neophytes in behind and the Kelemorph in behind, and then they did lots of shooting. And we put some holes in the Tau list before they could get to grips with me. It's not an easy matchup for Tau, though. To be fair, I think GSC have lots of things that make their life more difficult. Knights was fun to beat. Blood Angels was fun to beat. They're all armies that I get a bit spooked with when I'm playing Magicari, so it was nice to beat those. All really, really nice opponents, including Thomas Kappa piloting the Blood Angels, who I've actually played before at Hellstorm. He's a really lovely lad. And then the losses were I hit Mark Pilkington's Emperor's Children in round 2. And Mark Pilkington, the last time I played him, you come away charmed and smashed is the answer. He's lovely, he's really friendly, really earnest, really enthusiastic for the game. That all comes across, and he just castrates you. It just leaves you, just absolutely destroys you. And that was exactly how this went. The Emperor's Children rushed me very effectively and punted me off the board. But I am now sliding into his DM so he can teach me how to play Gene Stealer Cult. So that's good. Thanks,
nice.
And then I also went down to Orcs, very epic cinematic game, Abandoned Sanctuaries, and he just shoves these 3 big vehicles full of Orcs onto all 3 middle objectives, turn 1. Gazgul's in a wagon in the middle. I've got my whole castle of little spindly men there. I'm like, are we going to be okay? I don't, I don't know. Ran in, blew some stuff up. Orcs came out, punched some stuff. We were not okay. We didn't quite make it. There were a few swings on the saves, but I think Jack, who was piloting the Orcs, he was a really fun, quirky guy to play against. Just had my number in that one and used the sort of the sort of staging really well. Then finally, I played Thousand Sons at the end, and it was a bit of a rub in the face because it was Mark Pilkington's Thousand Sons army, which I've lost to before, and which he had lent to his mate Liam. So I lost to Mark Pilkington twice in one fucking event because it's his teammate Liam who he's been teaching Thousand Sons, and oh god, Thousand Sons right now are really very very good, really very 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 good.
Did he have flamers, Tom?
He didn't have them. No, he didn't have them. So this was a more conventional Thousand Sons list. I think it would be even scarier with Flamers. He was going with Spawn for blocking, and I think Lee's run Spawn in his Thousand Sons list before. If you'd swap those Spawn out for Flamers, which you could absolutely have done, you could have had 2 packs of 5 Flamers and a character for pretty much that. That would have been horrific. And Scarab Occult Terminators, all my shooting's damage 2 with some AP, but he can -1 it, turns it to damage 1, means none of it has any AP at any point. So if I'm shooting at one of his Terminator squads, he's just making 2-ups, 3-ups against every gun in my army, which is a bit horrifying. That was a tough game to finish on. But I think I learned a lot. I really liked the GSC list. The bikes are just amazing. This is why everyone runs 30, so I will move towards running a few more of the bikes. I missed having my Goliath rock grinders, and I felt like although the pure strains have better melee and reach into infantry, the rock grinders maybe offer a bit of solidity, but also the option of just shooting. You don't have to go forwards. Pure strains have to fight, have to go in, but rock grinders, you can get 2-3 turns of shooting out of them before you actually fight anything with them. So I'm going to try 2-3 rock grinders as my sort of push melee counter threat. And because that rounds out, it gives me a bit more high AP shooting as well, and we'll see how we go.
Do you think you could have done anything else in the Orc matchup?
I think a couple of things. I think the issue I have with Orcs fundamentally, and it's why it makes it an interesting matchup, is all my shooting is very close range. So whilst it's good, if I'm shooting him, I'm near him, so he's going to be able to wire and charge me. I think I probably needed to hold one bike squad back for counter pushing after he'd got out and started wiring and all that stuff. I was trying to sort of basically I had my gun line behind and I was using all the bikes and pure strains to buy me time, and they were dying on the front line. But I think with hindsight I could have held one bike squad back a turn, taken that charge, then used the bike squad to mop up, say, his Mega Knobs. His Mega Knobs came out from the truck. If I'd had something spare to do the proper strat combo demo charging into the Mega Knobs, I'd have been able to pick them up. Maybe then it's a slightly different game. But no, I think it was one where the combination of Abandoned Sanctuaries and him staging on me first did make it hard with the list that I had. It's another reason I think the Goliaths would be nice, because again, you've got something there which, if it goes to fight infantry, it will stay alive for a turn or two. Because infantry can't just blend it in quite the same way that my little infantry guys can. But there's stuff from all the games where it's about when and where I commit things, and what I use to sort of buy myself time with what actually goes and dies and when. And that's something I will get more practice with on Thursday when I try and fight Lee's Emperor's Children, I would imagine. So I'll see if I can get a better balance then as well. But yeah,
you
really.
That's a bat rep.
Well, me and Lee Jones were going to make a bat rep. So we'll make a bat rep Demons VGSC.
Awesome.
And then I think because I want to try a couple of bits that won't be painted against Churchwood, we'll probably not do a bat rep.
Cool.
And also because I want to preserve my poor delicate ego as well.
Of course.
But I will try to build on 96-59 or whatever it was I lost to Mark by. Those games were a bit distressing because what I'd found with GSC so far was that even when I lost, I scored super high. Not so in these games. So I need to work out how to get a bit more of a foothold in those really tough games to grind up to the 60, 70, 80 because I like to try and have good losses if I am going to lose. So that's something to work on. Yeah, they're awesome army, really fun, good secondaries, and so I just need to keep getting more familiarity with the matchups. And Leicester will be a good place to try them out further because they quite like the UKTC terrain. They can hang about, and they've got good shooting. So we will soon see how that goes.
Nice.
Right, we will now move to the first part of our How to Lose at 40k series. Very important series. We're going to put together all the expertise we've accrued over the last few years losing at 40k to offer you some tips. And today we're going to do practical tips. We will work through the various stages of the game and offer our best pieces of advice for how you can fuck up and lose at those parts of the games. We will start with how you can lose at your secondaries. We'll start then to think about how you can lose in your deep striking reserves and transports. We'll think about how you can lose in deployment, think about how you can lose when you're moving, lose in your psychic phase, lose when you're shooting, lose when you're charging, lose in combat, and lose to morale as well. So a whole lot of losing. We'll try and bring some stories and some anecdotes from our own experiences as well. And hopefully you'll come away better equipped to know how to lose. And if you want to apply that in reverse and try and use it to be better at the game, obviously I can't stop you. That's fine. It's your right as an observer to decide to interpret the information that way. But I strongly encourage you to take it in the spirit in which it was intended. Can I
preemptively start you with losing at the list phase?
Yes, you can. Of course you can.
Well, so I had my best ever performance at Birmingham when NIDs were pre-nerfed and I got a 4-1. So I'm on top of the world. I'm thinking I'm the next big thing, right? I'm honestly literally going there going, I'm going to get 4-1 again, easy. The only way is up, right? So I turn up at Leeds GT just after the Knights books have launched. Now, again, I'm not really au fait with, at this time, with prepping ahead for tournaments, etc. So I decided to take this Carnifex spam list. Everything's got OBSEC. It's doing, it's pretty cool. But all the Carnifexes are OBSEC 1. The Knights books just dropped. And I never really took it into my head, I should probably play against them. Obviously, I turned up. I'm like, I haven't played Knights yet. So I got game 1 against Knights. Well, so what do you do? Well, we're OBSEC 5. And we've got nearly the same amount of models as you do. And I'm like, oh, good. And all my things because I didn't pay for the adrenal glands. Good.
Yeah.
Good. So I'm winning on 5s. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just play them once and it'll be fine. I drew them 4 out of 5 games. 4 out of 5 games. Good. I went 1-4 and my morale was shattered. It was dark
harsh. That is rough. That is rough. The list building stage is an important one. I actually did start doing a series on list building, and that there is the first one on there. Maybe I should do the second one. Maybe I'll do that next week. But yeah, absolutely. Knowing what you're playing into and knowing what the terrain is like, that's a big one you hear a lot as well. Did you know?
100%.
Could you hide stuff? How much stuff have you got into this? Where does it hide? One thing I learned recently: a Goliath Rock Rider hides in all of the UKTC terrain. They fit in even the little bunker ones. That little truck, the truck just goes right in there. So I'm like, brilliant! You can have several of them on the board. You'll be just fine if you don't want them getting shot. So I'm going to bring 3, and we'll see how we get on.
Totally true.
Absolutely know the environment you're going into, the meta you're going into. Like we know Votan and Guard are going to be a thing soon, so we've got to be assuming that slugging matches at range are going to be quite rough for a bit. And knowing, the terrain pack is also really good. But secondaries, how can you lose in the secondary stage? Either of you got any key pointers as to how to lose at the stage of secondary selection?
I think it's probably the big thing is not paying attention to your opponent's army. At the end of the day, you go to a tournament and you hopefully know the sorts of secondaries you're going to take in the list building phase.
Absolutely.
My whole brain is wrecked and distorted by Harlequins.
Yes.
Because whenever I go to any game, I can basically have them pre-written in.
Yes.
And my only question is, what are your denies like? And clearly I didn't ask the right questions against that Orcs player at Coventry. But other than that, it's just about paying attention, to the sorts of things and understanding their game as well. So when we played England at the team event, and I played into Alex Harrison's Knights, I was like, well, I've played Lee recently and I killed Chaos Knights, so I'll be able to kill Imperial Knights. And that just wasn't the case. So Bring It Down was a terrible choice.
Yeah.
So I think just trying to understand your army will help you, and your matchups helps you pick the right secondaries. Because if you pick the wrong ones, you're probably going to lose.
You are.
So if you want to lose against elves, pick Assassinate.
Yes.
There's my tip for you.
Same for GSC, unless you're Mark Pilkington, in which case you will get your 15. Davey, have you got any tips for losing at the secondary stage?
Well, you hear people all the time saying, how much do you give on no prisoners? How much do you give up? How much do you give up? But you never say, how do you stop me, right?
Yeah.
Mark of Corn.
Yeah.
Things like that, right, will catch you out if you go, I'll just take a psychic. You haven't got any psychics, have you? No. That's the wrong question. You haven't got any denies, do you?
Yeah.
Things like that. You've just got to be super specific. Is there anything you can do to stop me scoring this?
Yeah, with psychic secondaries, I think it's huge. Yeah. So I've got the Magus with the Unwilling Orb. I've got 2 deniers from anywhere. This is something I do tell people at the start because I think that's fair. But that's a massive deal if you're going to take psychic secondaries. It does mean you're playing roulette with that. I think one of the other ones is if you look at the type of army and the nature of it, I think you have to really carefully think about what secondaries are going to be plausible, right? There are some armies out there where the best you are going to be able to do is spend the game killing them and being in the game, right? Demons, Orcs, Necrons, lots of things that flood the board do not give you the time to be going and playing a panicky action-based game. And some armies that normally can do that well when they've got space and time to do it cannot do it in those situations, right? That's where just taking secondaries that play into how the game's actually going to go, which is you're going to have to kill your way out of the mess that you've got in front of you, are much more sensible. So although you may have a game plan you like to do, you need to have a look at the opponent and be like, am I going to get the time and space to do this, playing against something like this? Something like Orcs that is going to do what Orcs do. It's going to run at you and it's going to eat up the board and you have to kill it off, is not going to let you play in that way. So I think being a little bit flexible is good. We always talk about kill ones. That there are armies that are good at denying kill secondaries, and there are ones that aren't. And it really depends on what you're playing against. If you're playing against Blood Angels, those characters are going to come and die because that is how Blood Angels play. If you're playing against Harlequins, they don't even need to. You'll get a Troop Master. He'll come in at some point and do nothing and lose you the game.
Loses the game for
Lost by 2 points. No.
Yeah. But other than him, none of them have to go in at all. So maybe you kill the Kelemorph if you're playing GSC. All the other characters are hiding in a ruin at the back. If you think you're going to take me, great, but not everyone is going to do that. Some players will. So you do need to have a think about that. And that's always the way with it. And with your faction secondaries, just make sure you've built your list to play your faction secondaries. Armies have great secondaries now. They basically reward you for doing what you want to do anyway. Obviously, if you're a Marines player, take shock tactics every time because that's 4 points.
Yep. Probably need to don't take any of them.
I saw Richard Siegler scored like 73 in his best game with Crimson Fist, and that was all shock tactics. Like, Richard Siegler really tearing it up with Crimson Fist.
It would have been 68
highlighting how good they are in the meta at the moment.
Did you see that an Ultramarine player won a GT at the weekend?
I actually did. Yeah, I actually did.
Commented on the Reddit he took shock tactics every game.
Yeah.
He did. So no
Ultramarines. I play Sean Catewell regularly. I can tell you, Ultramarines are good. Ultramarines are strong and they are dangerous, and they actually do have a lot of shooty game in there. They are quite horrifying to play into. If you assume anything, you are a very, very real danger of just getting picked up by the sheer amount of damage they can do. Great, okay. How do you lose the game at the stage of deep strikers and transports?
Well, I mean, you could fundamentally not put things in your transports.
You could.
It's a good one.
So don't
use the transports. You do need to put stuff in them now, or you die.
So, as a Harlequin player, I always keep my Shadow Seers out, but because of their aura, but I did have one game where I was like, why do I always do this? I'll just put my Shadow Seers in the transport, and then that helps with the movement against your 3 inches. Obviously, what that immediately removes is any feel no pain against mortals, any -1 to wound against your troops, and then you're just sat there going, this is quite sad. So thinking about what's going where is obviously quite important. And another Harlequin anecdote, we were just talking about this off camera. On stream, Ben Pearce, very good Harlequin player, friend of Davey's, was playing, and he had 2 CP to Phantasm, deployed everything on the line, but had actually spent 1 CP to put a troop unit in Deep Strike, forgot that, and then couldn't Phantasm. And then Creations of Bile did what he did best and charged their entire army into those bikes which were on the front line. So that immediately lost him the game. He lost a quarter of his army. He had no way of winning that game from then on. And that was because of because he put a unit in Deep Strike. And actually, I know quite a common thing, I'm sure, Tom, you can talk about this, is the GSC aspect. People put stuff in Deep Strike against you. I had one game when I was running AdMech, 4 planes. I played against Imperial Guard, and he put like a third of his army, all Scions and stuff, in Deep Strike. I won that game 100 points to 10 because he literally could Deep Strike nothing because I screened out everywhere.
Space, absolutely.
And it can be huge.
Yeah, I think that the space thing completely links to the secondaries. Some armies just fill up the board for 3 turns, and that's what they do. GSC are one of those armies. If depending on the matchup, if GSC have a good matchup, they will fill up the board for 3 turns. Which means if you've got reserves, things like Flamers. So I played a game recently. The opponent had all the Flamers because Flamers are good, and put the Flamers in reserves. If those Flamers start on the board, I think I'm probably tabled in 3 or 4 turns. As it was, they didn't get into anything good until it was too late. Like they pick up whole squads of neophytes once they start shooting, but it's already too late by that stage. And I've had games similarly with GSC where it's like, because you can Deep Strike, you think you should, isn't always the way. Sometimes, and I think in recent times I've got better at knowing, I need the bulk of the army on the board because I'm going to be shooting from the start. There's not going to be time to be setting up cool plays out of Deep Strike. I just need to have more of the resources to play with from the get-go. Exceptional circumstances and knowing when to put stuff in reserves that you might not normally is also really useful. Obviously, you can put anything in reserves these days. One of my worst ever performances of 40k ever was on stream at Goonhammer. I played against Death Guard and I lost something like 90-35, something like that. And there just wasn't space on the board for me to put my Ravagers and Raiders and the like comfortably with a large range of like Volkite Contemptors and Plague Burst Crawlers and whatnot gunning for them up in. It was a long ways deployment. And what I should have done was just put 2 of those in reserve. I have CP to put a Raider and a Ravager in reserves, and then I can hide stuff, and then I can spring my attack later on. Does it change the game? Maybe not, but it certainly makes it less of a heavy defeat because I'm not just losing stuff because I've gone second, right? And I've hoped I wouldn't. So I think that's a useful one as well. Deep striking to help out your actions game plan can be good. Like, it's always nice to have a little 5-man for R&D if you play R&D or something like that, just ready to pop down and do a corner somewhere. But just remember to have points for Phantasm as well, I guess, would be the...
I'm sure Ben is loving that we brought this up twice now.
I was going to say, it's a bit mean, actually, because we're not really supposed to be poking fun at random people we don't know.
I've never met.
We should be going after ourselves. That was very much the point of this. So I'm
sorry,
Ben. Ben went 5.
Because he's really happy. He's really happy with his result.
5-1. Ben had a great time,
It's a great performance.
If your only defeat is to Dom Maidlow, then you've done very well, ultimately. Absolutely. So I think that's just fine. I don't think there's any shame in that at all. It's just easier to laugh at people on stream, isn't it? That's why it's fun.
The only other thing I'd add to this Deep Strike conversation is always double check about Auspex Scan.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah,
the T-Suns one always gets me, man.
It's so horrible, the T-Suns one. Yes. 18 inches. That is absurd. I mean, I'm biased.
Minus an extra strong bolters as well.
Yeah. Particularly nasty. You can cop like 40 shots of AP2. That's not what you need if you've got 5 guys with a 5-up save. Awesome. How do you lose in deployment?
Well, I'm going to have to bring up something that Tom likes to bring up to me. So, once upon a time, was it January this year or was it last year?
I have no idea when, quite a while.
Tom came over and I just bought a Space Marines army and a beautifully painted Space Marines army. And we're like, let's use this on stream. We'll have a fun game. And I'm going to try this really narrative approach with
it was
and stuff. And Tom brought his Ulfway. Yeah. And I was like, what should I play my Space Marines as? I know I'll play them as Ultramarines because, I'm psychic and knew they would be winning GTs in the future. And I had lots of tanks and dreadnoughts and that sort of thing. And I got first turn.
Yes, you did.
Ultramarines get a redeploy of 3 units. And I was like, Tom's left out all this stuff. Dark Reapers, I know they're scary. They're over in that corner. So I'm going to move all my tanks and stuff to this corner where I can draw line of sight across the board, lap them away. I'm a tactical genius. Now, there were two issues with this. Issue number 1 was that I had been playing AdMech for quite a while at that point. I just assumed these dreadnoughts and tanks would have range across the board. I was sorely mistaken. So what happened in my turn 1? So I went, right, they're going to shoot down there. And Tom went, I don't think you've got range, mate. Tom was very right. And my Alpha Strike did nothing. The second problem was that Tom in his list had some Wraith guys with some good cannon. What are they called? LED cannons?
These were Wraith cannons. This was an 8th edition Wraith guard with Wraith cannon. So
this is a Wraith cannon.
Not optimal, very short range.
Strength 8, like D6 damage, but
they're great if the opponent comes within 9 inches of you.
Yeah. So by any rights, Tom would never get to fire these guns. No. But in my genius masterstroke, I had decided to put myself about 15 inches away from these things. And of course, Tom then got them out of the transport, advanced them, and all hell was let loose on my tanks. Yeah. So my learning point from that, apart from don't play the first time you use an army, is on
don't video it.
Is on a battle report, which will never see the light of day, thankfully.
It's one for the archives.
But no, so it's firstly check your distances, make sure you know your ranges, and secondly think about your opponent's distances as well. And obviously we always talk about pre-measuring, and we all do it now, don't we? We're like, right, okay, how far can that unit move? What's the ranges? You're checking all those things. But yeah, if you don't do it, that's the sort of thing that can happen. And that's my.
It's a particularly sad story, that one, and I do often
try to bring it up at every opportunity.
It's fun, isn't it? David, do you have any deployment stories?
So last night I played Votan and deployed both my Hive Tyrants in a line.
No! Oh dear!
So luckily he couldn't do it.
They have a weapon, which is quite good. Something like that.
It's pretty much what everyone's been talking about forever.
I think it is.
But luckily enough, I dodged it because I had Tyrant Guard in the way, but it was one of those things where I was like, I'm okay, that's fine. But it's just having those considerations. I know it sounds daft, and it's case by case, but I think to Chris's great point, right? It's all about sometimes thinking you know too much, or it's kind of like I was being complacent last night without asking the questions, and I think it's having that kind of knowledge and go, if I do this, is there anything you can do here or something like that? It's
threat
just
range,
again, you get that conversation going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is actually something that a nice opponent will basically work with you on. If you ask the right questions, you hit that nice point where they will tell you what sorts of things you need to look out for, but you need to ask the right questions to know. Things like Death Company yeeting their way across the board, or Atalan Jackals yeeting their way across the board, both terrifying super soldiers in their own right. So that's really important. Another big one, and it took me a while to deploy as if you might go first or second. Right, that's a very basic point, but you will go second and first in your games, like different times. So don't deploy with only one of those outcomes in mind. Sometimes this happens. I've definitely done this. As I say, the Death Guard game, I was just like, well, I just hope I go first, and I'll shoot him with some stuff.
How Ben Pearce deployed? What's
that?
No, putting the knife in on Ben Pearce. I mean, you and him are going to be in very real competition for the Harlequin's top 10 now. So it's we're starting some beef here. Let's have it. Let's have it.
You mean?
But yeah, so deploying with a game plan for either of those things. I've definitely done it where I've had like witches literally on the line. And it's like, well, if I go first, they run over, they do R&D, and that's just a difficult corner sorted. And if I go second, they just die. And it's like that's just 55 points that is dead for no reason. There is no need for you to do that. That is a stupid play, and I've definitely done that before. And obviously, some armies are super quick. Know if an opponent has a redeploy. Know if they have stuff that can go 22 inches and be in your grill. Have a plan for that. That's where things like screens are really good. Definitely had games where stuff has got right in my face and started tying stuff up when I didn't want it to do so. I think the last time I got absolutely wrecked by John Spence at a local one-dayer. Because it was my first introduction to the Black Legion Terminators, teleport, killer guy, res a guy, short charge. Everyone's happy. But I had Rangers. I had 3 units of Rangers. So I could very easily have happily had Rangers just all the way along the front, stopping anything like that happening. And if he does drop in, bolters kill Rangers. As it was, he got to bolter a troop to death, charge another thing. And then I had 10 Terminators literally on my backfield in turn 1. Which is, I'm looking at that being like, I have not done very well in this game. This is a low point. I
think deployment's the worst mistake, right?
Yeah,
because it literally sets up the entire game to then go in one direction.
Yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And so if you have any tools where you can correct deployment, that's so good, and take it every time. Like the Tau redeploy, the Eldar redeploy, stuff like that is super good because it does help you correct those mistakes.
Question on this, right? With this really nerdy thing that I get the mic taken out of me by my friends, where I PowerPoint every map at the GT, and I deploy on the map to scale. And then I go, okay, well, if I'm here, can I get where's the line of sight stop? So I know exactly where line of sights are.
It's very nerdy. You're right.
Too much effort. I'm not sure.
No, I think a lot of top players do this. I've top players.
You do it on TTS, don't you?
People have shown me TTS firing lanes. I know Sean Catewell does this. He wants to see where his Contemptor Dreadnoughts can shoot things, and it's not somewhere I've gone. But I do obviously like to. The one thing you can always do is you can play on those maps, right? We all play on the UKTC stuff all the time now. I think it's become like our default. And the first few times I went to those big events, I'd play games where I'd be like, "Oh, it's just like they know everything. Like they seem to have a really good plan." And I don't feel like I feel like I'm figuring it out, and that's the difference between actually practicing deploying on the right things and not doing it. Movement. How do you lose in the movement phase? I've got a great story for this one. I had a game against Aidan Brocklehurst at Twisted Warp where I alpha struck him so hard in turn 1 that he literally just had Morvenval, Celestine, and a Canoness left on the board. Because he'd put a lot of stuff in reserves, which was clever, incidentally. Aidan used reserves very cleverly because I think he knew what was going to happen, and he kept a shit ton of stuff up in the sky. And I had such a good turn, artillery picking stuff up, Harlequins picking stuff up, but I'd moved just close enough to let Celestine do her long intervention thing. And props to Aidan, he basically won that game just using Celestine, springboarding off that one combat and getting her all around the board, causing enormous havoc. And then using his reserves super cleverly as well, from Deep Strike as well. But that's a classic case of extended heroic intervention. Don't walk into that. Try and double check where these things are. Stuff can intervene 6. You got to ask questions. You've got to know if anything's going to behave slightly unusually to what you think is going to happen. And that was a game where a misstep in a turn that had gone super well completely changed the character of the match. Either of you two got any movement cock-ups?
Just moving forward too quickly, right? It's like you don't have to move your full movement. You don't need to charge forward. You absolutely do not.
No, you do not.
If you just move your entire army forward, even if you are one of those kind of armies, that's not necessarily the right thing to do.
Sometimes
especially if your opponent can just savage you turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's you always hear the top player saying it's games are won in the movement phase. Games are lost in the movement phase, man.
Yeah. No, I actually had that in the Thousand Suns game where I put 20 near. Well, I didn't put. I stuck a neophyte out onto an objective because it wasn't in cover. Had a 20 blob. They got shredded by Terminators. I had 2 of them left, and I was like, given that I was never going to hold that point, why do it? It's not got me anything. It's just lost me stuff. So it's knowing you do kind of need to know a bit about output and resilience to do this properly. But it's like, yeah, if all you're going to do is get your head blown off, don't put your head out. There's no need, right? Likewise, sometimes you have to go with everything. This is a conversation me and Chris have all the time because I'm a big fan of YOLOing and yeeting stuff. But if you go with everything, it's much harder for them to kill you sometimes. But it depends entirely on the game and the matchup. Sometimes going with everything is the right play. Sometimes going with nothing's the right play. And you have to figure that out and know when that is. But as you say, moving for the sake of it, that's not good. That's not good. Staging badly as well. If you get a transport somewhere and it's very easy for them to kill it and kill what's in it without it being able to hide.
Or wrap it.
Or wrap it. Oh my God, the Lee Jones Rhino. The Lee Jones Rhino. I went to watch a game between Chris and Lee because I have no life. And I watched Lee play Creations of Bio into the Harlequins, and he just sort of put a Rhino right in front of Chris's army, and Chris wrapped it with literally his entire army, and 10 chosen died getting out. And it was already a game that was going horribly, horribly wrong for the Creations of Bio, so it was just the most brutal and horrific thing I've ever seen. And again, sorry, Lee, that we're digging into you when this should be about us losing, but you're not on the show anymore, so you can't defend But those kinds of things I think are massive. Being a sort of, I think, thinking a turn ahead is good as well. Again, secondary stuff like that. If you need to be 6 inches over the other side next turn, you've got to set that up. You can set that up from cover. My opponent the other day did that really well with like Storm Boys setting up from cover to then fly in and do R&D. But you have to be thinking a turn ahead with your movement. You have to think about where you're going to need to be in the future, and also whether they're going to kill you before you can get there.
That's a general good rule of thumb, isn't it? In your turn, you want to be thinking, how do I score my points this turn?
Yep.
Is there any way I can deny them next turn? And how am I scoring my points next turn? And that's what I've learned is really important with Harlequins.
Yep.
And it's easy to do turn 1 and maybe turn 2, but as the game goes on, suddenly you're like, oh no, how am I getting my deadly performance? Or how am I getting my behind enemy lines next turn?
It's sort of like skipping from rock to rock.
Yeah, I've put these things forward knowing they're dying, but the stuff I've got also still ready, I've not laid that up for the next turn. I think that's super important.
That's actually another thing where knowing what your opponent needs to do is big, right? Because we had a game recently where I basically tried to come and get you, and I dropped loads of stuff in on your side of the board. And I was thinking about it over and over again. It's like, well, I know how Harlequins play, that they are going to give me shit for 3 or 4 turns. So actually I should have my army and just wait for you to come to me, really. And that way I have more stuff left for the later stages.
I can run away from you and go and score my points away from you.
If I drop in somewhere else in your backfield, you're like, well, fine, I don't need that now. I'll go and have a different backfield somewhere else. So it's so I think that's an important lesson, knowing that an army's sort of the demands of an army's secondaries are going to put things in certain places. So when you play Chaos armies and Demons armies, you know stuff that matters to them is going to go and stand in the middle, which is scary on one level, but actually gives you enormous power. Like enormous power. If you're like, there's going to be these 3 characters and this block of guys here every game, you can plan around that really nicely, but you do need to know what they're going to do for that. And if you don't, you'll be surprised, I guess. Know stuff. That's important. Otherwise, you lose.
Things. I do have one thing, and I'll mention it in the movement phase because it happened in the movement phase, but it's not technically movement, I guess.
Okay.
I played a few years ago now. I was playing my Custodes and I played against Kieran with his Death Guard. Okay. And Kieran had like lots of Dreadnoughts. And I built my Custodes list for 2 like 10-man or 8-man like Alaris blobs. And the idea was one started on the board and turn 1 I unleashed the Lions.
Yeah.
And then and they were all individual units. And I had this other unit which dropped down. I then built another list, which was a load of bikes, big blob of bikes, and 1 blob of Alaris. And the Alaris would unleash the lines, and they'd all go and do their own little things whilst the bike was there. That was the plan. So I played against Kieran. Turn 1, I went and unleashed the lions, and my Terminators, my 8 Terminators, all ran out to the middle. Yep. We're going to engage on all fronts and do all of our little things. And almost as soon as I did it, and then I charged into a bloat drone, which was sat in the middle, which exploded. And instead of my 8 Alaris Terminator blob doing D3 mortal wounds, he did D3 mortal wounds to every single Terminator. I've already been thinking, this isn't going to work because I'm going to fight with one Alaris Terminator. He's then going to interrupt and be able to chop up some of the other Alaris Terminators. So I was already thinking this plan is not going very well. And then on top of that, we then realised that his, 2 Leviathan Dreadnoughts were like, this one gun will kill that Alaris. This one gun will kill that Alaris. And the Alaris just got decimated. And basically I spent 5 turns in a really bad mood. Because I was like, I've lost this game literally in my first turn because I did something so stupid. It's impossible to win now. And we were doing like this league at the time. And I was just like, oh, God.
So the movement phase is the king of the, you can do that. Do you need to do that? Right. That is the phase where I think more than any other, you need to ask yourself over and over, yep, that's the thing I can do. Do I need to do that right now? Is that a good thing? Is that a useful thing to be doing? Are there going to be unintended side effects?
And linked to your idea of moving, like, do you have to move? When I played Manny, where we had this Admech off, and he had all these like 100 rangers, and I had lots of different units. And first turn was just a battle in the skies of all the planes. But I'd kind of moved a lot of stuff out to try and get to him because I knew I had to get to him. But actually, that was such a stupid thing to do because it just meant his rangers then just picked up all those things, charged those things, and suddenly, by turn 3, he was in my deployment zone. Whereas actually now, having played the Harlequins for a long time, I would know actually all this stuff is just going to stay in my half.
Yeah,
we're going to have a battle in the skies. We're going to see who wins the battle in the skies. And then I might start moving on and try and deal with some of his stuff. But actually just moving to try and get somewhere when you're just stood with your dick in the breeze, like, getting shot by something is a complete waste of time. You're just giving your opponent units.
It's not even just as bad as not achieving something. It's helping your opponent achieve things, right? And that can be really bad. Okay, psychic phase. How do you lose in the psychic phase?
Davey must be good at this.
Yeah, so one of the things, you think so, right? So one of the things that I would very much recommend is if your opponent has no way to deny you, don't feel like you have to go, right, this person's going to do this, roll dice. Get your cards, put them next to every psyker and say, right, they're going to do these two, they're going to do those ones, they're going to do those ones. And just plan out your psychic phase, man. Like, there's literally nothing stopping you from doing that. And then all of a sudden you just then roll dice, psychic phase over. But you just take away the risk of doing anything dumb.
Because sequencing can be a real issue in the psychic phase, right? If you 100%. Forget you use a reroll on something that's more important, you've got something more important later, you've already used a reroll, you're not thinking about what needs to happen and where, that can really fuck things up. I've definitely had it where, like, if you've got like a move again power and you've already used a reroll, then you fail your move again power, you're like, oh god.
I'd hate to be T-Sons. Could you imagine?
Oh, it's so much
admin for that phase.
So much admin. We did actually have that. The one high moment for me in the T-Sons game was that he's got a little dude on a disc that goes in, casts a Psychic Interrogate, flies out again, and he cocked up the sequencing on that so that I stopped him. Nice. He was just stood there in front of my army, and I just shot him to death. I was like, well, there's some catharsis here because he's the only guy here that isn't rocking like a 2-up save. And but yeah, no, exactly that. I think that's where games can go wrong. I think knowing. Obviously, deny ranges, keeping an eye on, you want to be able to cast powers without getting stopped, making sure you get your actions done if you've got psychic actions, making sure that you do those first and get those resolved. And if you've got any tools for stopping those being denied, then use them on those rather than wasting it on like a smite or something.
I think unnecessary casting.
Yes.
We've all been there, I'm sure. Oh, what powers shall I do? I might as well do this one. Oh, I've now perils. Excellent. I've had that. I once had a Shadowseer who double perils off both his casts and blew himself up.
Was I playing you when that happened? Or how do I know?
This was against Grey Knights. My one Shadowseer just had this run where he perils like twice every game and killed himself like 2 or 3 games in a row. And the pinnacle was in literally, I want to do this cast like double 1. Oh, okay, cool. Right, I'll just take the mortal wounds. I'll do my second one. Double 6. I've already used my reroll elsewhere. I guess I've just died. So I drawed a double 1 and a double 6. It was
can be very brutal. But yeah, as you say, no sort of casting for the sake of it. There's a very real risk to casting. You can get hurt, so there's no point hurting your characters for no reason. Stuff exploding in your own lines isn't very funny. Well, it is very funny, but it's not funny for you. But it is maybe a bit funny for you, but not that much funny for you. Shooting. How do you lose in the shooting phase?
Splitting fire.
Splitting fire. Yes. There can be some remarkable instances of this. Sometimes you have to because you're desperate. But if you get overconfident and you just start yeeting different guns willy-nilly in different directions.
As a Harlequins player, the amount of people who are like, I'll kill that Starweaver easily, so I'll split over there, and then they get really annoyed when the Starweaver is still alive.
Yes.
It's such a common thing. We've all been there. We all know we shouldn't do it, and yet we all do it, don't we?
Yeah.
So
it's just like, again, it's a bit like having your cards in the psychic phase, Davey. It's like if you have a shopping list of what I would like is for that to be dead, that to be dead, that to be dead, and that to be dead. You go around and make sure those things have happened one at a time with you, and ideally you set yourself up so you have cover if that thing doesn't happen, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same in obviously in the game the other day. So I chucked a demo charge at kill rig, got 5 wounds through damage 3. It made all its invuns. I was like, oh shit! And luckily I did have the rest of the army to drop the kill rig. Ultimately that was disastrous for the game because there were other stuff I needed to kill as well.
Yeah.
But I had at least set up so that if plan A does not go well, I have plan B, plan C, plan D, and other things to get the most important thing that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And that can be really big. I think knowing what your opponent's defensive plays are and knowing maybe how to tease those out, that can be good because we've all walked into lightning fast reflexes or something that means you now can't shoot the target. Transhuman. God, the number of times I've fallen down on transhuman, unbelievable. And so having a plan for those sorts of things, you learn, don't you? The different tricks that armies have. It's the Grey Knight. It's the teleporting Grandmaster. God, I hate that guy.
Oh God, that's rough. You haven't seen that in a while, I think.
No, but I still see him. A mate of mine from where I grew up plays Grey Knights, and he loves that dude with the 3-up invuln as well. And it's just like just falling down into something like that is really, really frustrating when it happens.
I think that one links to my one, Tom.
Yeah,
undervaluing killing obsec chaff.
Oh yes, that's very good. I've lost a game to you by undervaluing doing exactly that. Because you had your Hormigans, and I opted to go after a Harpy, I think, instead of the Hormigans. And those Hormigans regenerated D3 plus 3 models 4 times in the remainder of the game, and went from the corner. I think by the end they were taking objectives on like the other side of the board, right?
Yeah.
And I'd played you. I know that you do annoying shit. And I think that like the last time we played, your Gargoyles were sticking out, and I was like, Gargoyles are dead. Because fuck the Gargoyles. I got no time for the chaff anymore because I've seen what you do with it. And although in my head in that game I was like, well, the Harpy is a Harpy, so I've got to drop that if I can drop that. Actually, taking out the Obsec early in a game can be huge, right? Massive. And if it's around later on, it's absolutely huge. Absolutely huge.
Especially against Nids at the moment, by the way, because Nids, like, if they're not taking Warriors, because Warriors have been nerfed heavily, if they are using Hormigans to turn against stuff like that, if you can get rid of those and you haven't got any other obsec, like you can bully them in the primary.
Completely.
And it's one of the reasons why I lost a lot of my games at Coventry is primary.
Yeah. No, completely. I think that's completely
right.
We
have a video series on playing the primary.
We do.
Need to watch that.
Go and watch it in the. I don't know how promoting myself or
in the link down below.
Yeah,
that's what they say, don't they?
There's a look. You can go and you can do.
Whatever you want.
Wait, I don't know. Google it. Like, no, that'll be good. Sometimes shooting makes things worse as well. Stuart, if you are watching, Stuart is the king of your shooting making your life worse because Stuart will poke some zombies out, and you shoot the zombies. And then he regrows the zombies, and then he regrows them onto an objective, and then he gets a 12 primary. And stuff like that is extremely powerful in 9th. And I've lost plenty of games killing things.
Chris, you're right. Making charges worse, mate. It's the worst. Isn't it?
Whoa, making charges worse can be a disaster. Yeah, exactly. You've killed something that you were going to charge. It's so funny when that happens. People get their bloods up. It's like, I just got to kill. I want to kill stuff. And you're like, you've got to charge there. I guess in general you want to not be shooting stuff you're planning on charging unless you need to soften it up. I guess.
Yeah, it depends on if you need to soften up.
We're segueing into charges here, and I
Oh,
think
smooth.
How can you lose charging?
Well, obviously, a big thing for me is Overwatch.
Yep.
So I remember playing with my Necrons into Tau. This was in 8th when they could greater good with everything. I literally remember announcing, I'm going to do this really clever thing. I'm going to charge my Doomsday Arc and charge this character, and I'm going to swing around and hide. I'm going to do this really cool play. I literally said those words. And the guy went, cool, I'm going to greater good with the Riptide. And then my Doomsday Arc just went like that. This
God.
is interesting. Then more recently, when I was playing Thousand Suns for that one tournament, which was great fun, in my final game, I played into guard, and I had these 3 Zangor Enlightened, and there was an infantry unit, and there was a tank behind it. And I was like, I'll just tag the tank. So obviously what you do is you charge the troops and then pile in and consolidate and tag the tank. What you don't do is declare both as a target.
Don't charge the tank.
Allowing the tank to overwatch on a 5-up re-rolling or whatever it was. That'd be a really stupid thing to do. For some reason, that is what I did. And those Zangor Enlightened died. And it's just one of those things where you think about it and you're like, I just don't understand why. How did I end up at that outcome? Why was that the outcome that I should do?
Let's say you want CP to put something in reserve when you want a Phantasm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
You do that. That would be
Who would
crazy.
do that?
Only a moron.
Why would you do that then?
Please don't kill me, Ben. Please don't kill me, mate. Sorry.
Complete imbecile would be the one to do that.
5-1
material at best.
Yes.
Pathetic.
Yeah, useless. Fucking useless. How else? Charging. I mean, armies that can move away. Harlequin's really annoying. They move away. They run away from you.
Don't forget it.
Charging can trigger abilities and things that make things worse. Squig bombs. My poor pure strains charged into those squig riders, and the squig bomb goes off, and that's 3 dead gene stealers. That's really painful. So that just wasn't a good target for them to be fighting. You've got to go and fight something else. Got to know what your opponent's units can do. Also, always have a CP to re-roll your charge. Good grief. We've talked about charge distances before, but charges at north of 7 inches are not likely to happen, and they are at least possible if you have a re-roll available. So you need to have a re-roll available. That's a big one. That was actually one of the things I was finding with this list, and one of the reasons I'm adjusting the GSC list is you need CP for everything you do in GSC. And I had my 3d6 pure strain out of deep strike charges. I love that. I love the 3d6 charge out of deep strike. It's really fun. I will, when I play Leon Thursday, take my aberrants and do that because it's fun and because I haven't got everything painted yet. But that fails a lot, and you need a CP for that. And so that's just one more thing you need a CP for in a list of an army that desperately needs CP for everything it's trying to do. And that can be rough and can leave you in quite a difficult spot. And so if you get left with your trousers down and you failed your charge, that's pretty game ending, and has happened to me plenty of times.
100%, man. Like, I think I've been into this before because Kraken have the spell where they can reroll charges, right? So I go, and if I get a 9-inch, then I can reroll the charge and I'll probably get it. No, I won't.
About half the time, a reroll 9.
Sure,
Like mids they have a stratagem for 3 dice on the take away 1 on the charge, and they have they have different ways to reroll charges.
Yeah, you've got a lot of good tools. Yeah,
but the thing is, they're just helping you get a successful charge that you should only be making because you think you'll be successful in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
pushing your luck.
Absolutely. It's not like a permission slip to go, 10-inch? Yeah, no worries, mate.
Obviously, this doesn't apply if you're Paul James, by the way. Paul James doesn't even try charges that are easier than 10 as a rule, and he
fails the short ones.
Yeah, he fails the ones. He only makes 10, 11, 12 charges. That's the life he lives. But we're not all Paul. Combat. How do you lose in combat? I mean, we had a great story earlier on with the old Blood Angels interrupt. By the sound of it, sounds like that was a nasty one.
Just take a second to think.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't even want to fight until they can't interrupt, right? Some armies you just wait, just it's not necessarily the time to have a fight if they are definitely going to interrupt into your stuff, or you pick one fight at a time. And I've definitely had plenty of games where I picked 2 fights and then just lost something for no reason, so it's not been useful.
That's it, isn't it? That's the classic charging 2 things. You can only fight with one.
Yeah.
They've got the interrupt. You're literally just giving them a unit for free.
You are. It doesn't do anything.
And you're making them spend 2 CP. That's literally the only.
Yeah.
I'll spend 2 CP to kill a unit.
I think it's a fair investment.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think not making the most of your pilings and consolidates is quite a classic thing of, I'll just move it, and it happens all the time. And quite often you'll be playing games, it's quite a casual game, and then suddenly you're like, actually I should be moving around and trying to get all these different angles. What can I do with this? And it's such a precise game in general. I think trying to maximize those can go a really long way. And actually, talking about interrupts, I think people underutilize an interrupt to base models. So
I was doing this to you.
So Tom did a really good job when I played him, because he knew that I could pile and consolidate 5 inches. So Tom knew that his stuff wasn't going to really hurt me that much in combat, unless you're 8 neophytes who killed 5 fucking point swing.
Eight neophytes rolling on 5s and 5s, battered like 4 Harlequins. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Anyway, right after that, but what Tom did do was, because he knew that my plan was to swing around models to get into deployment zones and stuff, I would have to start in a place where I was trying to kill something. So Gene Stealers could hurt me, for example, but the hybrids aren't going to, in theory. Yeah. So then he would interrupt, not with the goal of trying to kill me, but with trying to just to stop my movement. Yeah. So I played Jamie the other day with having Harlequins versus Tau. And actually, I'd done a couple of charges, and it didn't matter in the end, but I did spot that I charged one side and kind of did the fighting, because I knew I didn't want him to interrupt over here, which meant he could have interrupted on the left-hand side. I put 2 troops into a crisis commander. He could have interrupted and based me. Yeah. My 2 troops were never going to kill that commander. I'd made that charge so that I could pile in and consolidate around the model into the deployment zone. Yeah. And obviously, as an opposing player, Jamie's like, there's no point in interrupting because I'm not going to kill those 2 troops. Yeah. Actually, the point of interrupting would have been to base me, so I couldn't make that move, so I wouldn't then score those 2 extra points behind enemy lines. As it didn't matter. I mean, he was blapping me off the board, and he probably would have won anyway. But it's just like those little things. I think sometimes it's really easy to just think of an interrupt as is it worth interrupting to try and kill something? There's not actually it. A huge part of the interrupt is, can I interrupt to stop their movement if their movement's important to me?
Yeah, because as again, Stuart, our good friend and teammate, highlights this in the way he squeezes every inch out of Death Guard more than most. But the combat phase is a movement phase. It is a movement phase. Paul is also amazing at this. Actually, as soon as you have to run a slow army, you see it right with both the Deathwing and the Death Shroud. But if you're not squeezing every inch of movement out of it, or if you're not trying to frustrate your opponent's movement in that phase, then you're not getting the most out of it. Morale. I mean,
what's morale?
Well, good for you. I take a lot of morale tests these days. Now I'm playing GSC. I have stuff running left, right, and centre. Sometimes you just have to auto pass, right? If it's
knowing when is the key, right?
Knowing when.
You only do it once, so
sometimes you completely throw it away for no reason. Sometimes you think, I'll get away with it, and then one guy runs, and you roll a couple of 1s and 2s, and then the whole squad. I mean, again, some of the armies I play at the moment, I can regen models. It's really good to have a couple of guys left. So sometimes knowing...
You did that in your stream game.
I did.
Game 1 or turn 1, you lost some bikes. And I was like, I wonder if you're going to auto-pass the bikes, because you're going to bring back some bikes and you'll have quite a few left. And then 1 or 2 ran away.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think with the bikes, certainly in that game, my assessment was that there might be a more vital auto pass
exactly.
later on, because I was in the town matchup. I'm thinking the time will be when burst cannons start hitting my neophytes, because if I lose a whole 20 blob, I lose 4 seismic cannons, which is what's going to hurt the town. With the bikes, what's great about them is you can lose 7, and they are just as dangerous as they are before, because you've got one lad that can throw a demo charge and 2 buggies, and that's all you need. As long as you have that left, doesn't matter. That first turn was great, because it was exactly like, it's like, yeah, come on, kill some bikes, I'll regrow them, on we go. Essentially nothing changed. Then when I did leave a plane on 1 wound, which did then kill my primers, which was very, very funny. Just flew over and punked him. That was really sad. But yeah, so it's I think knowing when to pass, knowing when you can't risk it. Again, if you've got units that regenerate and you've got 1 or 2 left, it's really, really good to keep them around if you can. I've had cultists run away and in really important moments when you don't need that.
And also, it's kind of out of your control. Knowing sometimes it's good to fail. So, for example, if you've been wrapped, and then one of your models runs away, and you can just pick up the model that's been wrapped.
Yes, this is actually really good. Again, yeah, absolutely. You can use it to get yourself out of a pin, get yourself out of combat, so you can shoot. And I think the other thing with morale is it's one of those stages of the game people just forget to do. I think often quite innocently, but just remember it, because especially with the way it's designed in 9th, you can kill whole Space Marines with it. That's great. That's amazing, right? If you get a few expensive models to run away, that's really good. So always remember to do it and check. And people go, "Oh, well, I only fell on a 6." Well, let's see. Have a roll. So yeah, it can make a big difference. It can swing things in a big way. Very good. That's a lot of ways to lose. A lot of ways to lose in the West. And we will return next time for how you can lose in a sporting fashion. Maybe we'll approach it in a how you can lose in an unsporting fashion. Maybe we'll do both. I don't know. We'll have a think about it. But we'll be exploring this realm of loss in other ways in the future. But before we finish, we have instructed Davey as the content creation intern to go away and get us lattes, but also to come up with just the tip with which to finish this particular podcast. Davey, what is your tip for the eagerly listening audience?
So it's something that I've been doing a lot. Like my job is data analytics, and as a result, like I always want to look at is there something I can take away from the data. So one of the things that I would recommend that people do, and you can even do this at very top level. I did the 8-game Coventry. I looked at all the results that I got in that game with that event with that list. I worked out what was my average primary for every game I won, what was my average primary for every game I lost, and the same for secondaries. And then if you work out the difference, you can see what actually stops you from winning the game almost. Yeah. And what I found that the games I lost, I had the majority of the points, or 3/4 of the points that I didn't win by, were primary.
Yeah.
So I can actually put that firmly at the door of my primary, and will that help me win further games in the future? No, but will it open the door to me understanding how I can improve? And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people, including myself, don't necessarily look at.
Definitely. Yes. No, definitely. I think that's absolutely right.
And it's really easy to do, man. Like if you've got the ICT gap, you can just sit there like with a little Excel and work out averages, man. It's super easy. Yeah. I'm happy to discuss it with anyone. I'd love to talk to people about how they do it as well, because I just think that the numbers don't lie.
No.
So do you love Excel?
Oh, mate, do I love Excel?
Lee is obsessed. So it sounds like you just found a new best friend.
Yeah, they'll be
you and Lee could just start chatting about Excel, and that could be your night.
Well, I do love Excel because I work in the beer industry, and my job is data analytics of the beer industry.
Okay, you just suddenly sounded slightly cooler there. So well done. Saved it. Well done, mate.
Absolutely. It's not like I'm doing Hoovers, right? It's
the apps are amazing for that, and it's fun because you can look at your win rate versus different things with different armies as well. I think that's really useful. You can
go down by mission.
You start knowing what good and bad matchups are for you as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, Chris? You said you had 171 matches on your ICT app.
Yeah, on my old Battles app, I had 171 games.
I've got 177 on this one. Yeah.
Man, you could look at Abandoned Sanctuaries. How often do I spawn Abandoned Sanctuaries? And you could really break it down like that if you were as lame as I am.
And again, it's the more you actually input into it, the more useful it is, right? Like I'm very lazy. I don't put who went first very often, but actually that would be useful to know. Like you'll go first, go second, win right. If I actually had that information, that'd be good. When I move over to the new app, I'll try and be a bit better. So yeah, having a more data-driven approach to your games. I think this is something lots of people do now, and it's really, really cool. Really, really good. And,
and there's that 40k calculator thing where it works out like how many units you kill and stuff. Like,
I hate that stuff. I like to be surprised a bit. I like to be, I don't know. I don't want to. But I mean that stuff's incredible, right? It gives you really, really useful tools for expected outcomes, which can make a massive difference.
You'll never remember it all. You'll never remember it all. But it just gives you an idea of like, oh, this thing is actually quite good at anti-tank, or this thing is actually quite good at mullering loads of dudes. Like it.
I think Chris sits at home mathing out trying to kill Bellicor, don't you, Chris? Quite a lot.
I did do that once with my with all my buffs. I worked out that it was on the nose. If I invested 4 CP with my 10-man into Bellicor, and it literally he's got like 20 wounds, and I did 20 wounds.
22.
Yeah, it was literally that, and I rolled it out. And it was so funny. It was like the first time I did like 9 wounds. The second time I did 12 wounds. The third time I did 30 wounds. And it was just like completely different. So I know if I go into demons, do I want to go into Bellicor? Well, if I've managed to soften Bellicor up with some neuros and some spells, then the 10-man's going in. If it's a wing and a prayer and this is my only out, then the 10-man are going in. I know it's a 50-50. If the game's in an okay position and I can play around Bellicor, there's no way I'm going to just go in and send in those 10-man because they could just do 9 wounds and it's not a good time.
No, absolutely. Yeah, so I think those are good things, very useful things to have a bit of practice with, and definitely make you a bit sharper and better prepared for different outcomes. That's a really good tip, Davey. Well done. Nice. Solid first tip. He snatched a good tip. Well done. Very nicely done. This has been a very fun show to do. We'll be back again in a little while. We've got Leicester before very long, so I guess what we'll probably do is check in just before it to preview. Actually, hold on. That's actually literally next. Oh no, we got.
It's not this weekend. It's the weekend.
Yeah. We'll be. We may well be able to check in, preview that, and offer some more tips on how to lose. We'll discuss and we'll get back to you. But until then, we've been the Plus, and we will see you around. Have a nice rest of your life. Bye.